This is a head-to-head comparison video, and we're going to be looking at the Ford Maverick and comparing it with the Santa Cruz. Going to be jumping between some inside, some outside footage, and breaking it down very differently than what you've seen in some of my previous videos. Let's go for it. The Ford Maverick and the Hyundai Santa Cruz belong to a brand new class of vehicle, and that's the subcompact pickup truck. Now, these things are obviously smaller than what's currently available on the market, so things like the Ranger, the F-150, etc. But one of the interesting things is that these are built off of similar platforms to vehicles that both manufacturers currently have. We're going to get to the platforms as well as different options for engines underneath the hood and a number of other things, but I actually want to start this thing off looking at pricing. So we're going to start off on the Ford.ca and the .com websites, starting off with the Maverick. So we do have the XL version in Canada, starting off at about $26,000. The Lariat goes around $35,000. On the US side of things, it's $20,000 up to $25,500. Now, there are a few caveats to that, because in the US side of things, you can get front wheel or all-wheel drive as an option on every trim level, whereas in Canada, you can only get the Lariat with all-wheel drive. Something to think about there, and looking at the pricing difference between the two of them, that's why the US seems significantly cheaper, because in Canada, we don't have the option of getting the front-wheel drive Lariat, and even in the EcoBoost down in the States, you can get that front-wheel drive as well. It's just not available as an option in Canada. Looking down in the States for the Santa Cruz, slightly different because we've got the SE trim level of the vehicle coming in at around $24,000, moving into the Limited, which is around $40,000. And then on the Canadian side of things, you've only got two available trim levels, which are either the Preferred or the Ultimate, $38,500 versus $44,800. Now, there are a few caveats to pricing on both sides of it, on the Maverick as well as on the Santa Cruz, and that's in the starting from price point. Because if we click on this little info arrow, so as you can see there, does it include taxes, delivery, destination fees, and things like that? There are dealer administration fees and other charges that may be over and above the MSRP of the vehicle as well. As we move up to different trim levels and different options, a fully loaded Ultimate or Limited trim, as it's known in Canada for the Santa Cruz, is going to run you about $41,000 in the USA. In Canada, it's $46,700. That's the Santa Cruz, but look at the difference inside of the Maverick. When we look at the Maverick, it's available in the USA. If you pretty much fully load this thing at $36,500, and then in Canada, you're $42,500 in comparison. So that is a huge spread difference. Santa Cruz, the summary there is $46,700 in Canada versus $42,500. So you're about 10% cheaper in Canada for the Maverick fully loaded. And then looking at the US side of things, it's about a 15 roughly percent difference between those ones as well. So there is quite a little bit of a price difference between the two of them, but you do have options for front wheel versus all-wheel drive. One thing to point out about the Maverick is that it is based off of the same platform as the Ford Escape as well as the Bronco Sport. And that's where when we look at some of the interior stylings of the Maverick, it does really remind me of the Bronco Sport as well as the Escape. Same platforms. Totally makes sense. And then in comparison to the Santa Cruz, that is based off of, so it's a redesigned unibody platform, very similar to what we'd find in the newly redesigned 2022 Hyundai Tucson. So you do have a few things to consider there. It's a new body platform for the Santa Cruz versus an established one for the Maverick. If we look at drivetrains for both vehicles, for the Maverick and for the Santa Cruz, it's available either front wheel or all-wheel drive, with a tiny little bit of an asterisk. And the reason why is because the Santa Cruz is only available all-wheel drive in Canada, versus in the States, it's available front-wheel drive in the lower trims, and then it's going to be all-wheel drive in the higher trims. So you do have a few different options there. Wheel styling is very different between both vehicles as well. Because we look at the Maverick, we're getting either 17 or 18 inch. In comparison, the Santa Cruz is going to be either 18 or 20 inch. But asterisks again, that is going to be an all-season tire for both vehicles. And here's the cool thing. The Maverick, and like at the end of the day, Ford is known as a truck company. That's what they're known for. You do have the option of getting an all-terrain tire directly from the factory at time of ordering. You've got the FX4 off-road package and a number of other things as well. But one of the great things is that if you're truly looking at taking this vehicle off-road, you do have the option of getting those all-terrain tires directly from the factory. Now, looking at the Santa Cruz, you could absolutely look at doing an aftermarket solution. I just think it's more convenient having that all-terrain tire option directly from the factory instead. And other things to point out on the exterior of both vehicles, we do have LED headlamps there. And when we get into the higher trim levels, so the Lariat inside of the Maverick, and then either the Ultimate or Limited, depending on if you're in Canada or the States, you do have our projector lights, so it does have signature lighting in there as well, but they are still LEDs. We've got some other great things for the body, some things including a rear sliding window. It's manual sliding in both vehicles as well. And then one of the other great features that we've got would be the blind spot system. On the Ford side of things for the Maverick, the blind spot system is optional across the entire vehicle lineup, versus in the Santa Cruz, it's actually standard across the entire one. And that's where things really start to break down and the huge differences really start to show in the differences of the Maverick versus the Santa Cruz, because some of the available technology is standard inside of the Santa Cruz, where it's either optional or not available whatsoever inside of the Maverick. But we'll get to some of those ones like the lane keep and follow assist and things like that when we jump inside of the vehicle, looking at first and second row spacing. But next up, I want to move into under the hood. So what's going on with the engines for both of them? Now, both the Maverick and the Santa Cruz do have two available engine choices, but the Maverick is going to win out in one area, and I'll explain that in just a second. The Santa Cruz has the option for either a 2.5 liter inline 4, or you can get that same 2.5 liter turbocharged. Good amount of power in both engines. In the base engine, it's 191 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque, while inside of the turbocharged, it's 281 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. So very, very good power, especially when you look at that turbocharged engines. Long live the turbos. These things are absolutely amazing. Now, when we look at the Maverick, slightly different. So we've got the option for the 2.5 liter hybrid, which is actually the standard engine, and then you can upgrade to the 2 liter EcoBoost engine. And that 2 liter EcoBoost you're going to find in a number of other Ford and Lincoln vehicles. Power-wise, the full hybrid is going to have 191 combined horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque, while the 2 liter EcoBoost is going to have 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. So power-wise, the base engines are fairly close to one another on both vehicles. You will have more torque inside of the Santa Cruz, but it's going to be infinitely better fuel economy inside of the Maverick because it's a hybrid. When you get into the more powerful engines, the 2 liter turbo versus the 2.5 turbo, they are fairly close power-wise as well, but same thing. The Santa Cruz still does pull ahead looking at power, which actually translates to a few benefits for the Santa Cruz over the Maverick. And that is specifically looking at the towing and the max payload capacities. Looking at towing between both vehicles, it actually is a fairly substantial jump because the Santa Cruz is going to have at least 3,500 pound towing capacity in front wheel drive. When you move into all wheel, it's going to be an impressive 5,000 pound max towing capacity. Inside of the Maverick, you're going to be at 2,000 pound minimum max towing, and then it only goes up to 4,000 pounds when you get the optional 4K tow package. One of the benefits of the Maverick when you get the tow package is it's got some upgraded engine cooling and things like that, which is why it gets the ability to tow what it can. But even still, even maxed out, the Maverick is still 1,000 pounds less than the available towing inside of the Santa Cruz. But here's the next part, the max payload between both vehicles, and they're kind of both a little bit all over the place. Looking at Hyundai, it kind of bounces between 1,700 and change and around 1,400 and change on the low end, and then the Maverick is kind of around 1,500 pounds. But there is a huge asterisk between both of them, because you look at stickers you look at the yellow door sticker for both the Maverick and the Santa Cruz. The Santa Cruz, you're roughly going to be actually about 1,411 pounds for the max payload capacity, versus in the Maverick, it's plus or minus roughly 100 pounds. So you're either between 1,300 and 1,550-ish pounds roughly, looking at the payload. But again, the asterisk is there, and the reason why is because every single option you add on is going to take away from your max payload number. I'll give you an example. You look at the Ford side of things, you want to add in the sunroof. That's going to weigh a couple pounds. You add in the Lariat luxury package. Each individual component is going to weigh a certain amount of weight. And it's the same idea with the Santa Cruz. Every component that you add into the vehicle is going to bring down your max payload. And the reason why is because every one of those components has a net weight. So you have to take that one into account. The payload in any truck, not just even these micro trucks, the payload in any vehicle is going to be dependent on not only what cargo you've got in there, but also what people you've got in there. And I'll explain that one because I'm 180 pounds. And let's say if there was two of me. So you'd have me and little me. Oh, hey. And let's say we weighed the same 180. So it's 360 pounds that would get subtracted from your maximum payload. If you have 4 full-size adults inside of either vehicle, that's 720 pounds that gets subtracted from your max payload as well. So really, you're not actually getting 1,400 pounds of payload inside of either vehicle, like 1,500 pounds respectively. You're getting significantly less because you have to look at what specs do you have on your vehicle. But if you're honestly really nickel and diming the max payload and towing capacities in the Santa Cruz and the Maverick, just bump yourself up. You don't necessarily have to go for like an F-150 or a Ram or whatever the case may be. You could just look at something like the Ranger, so one of those mid-sized trucks instead of one of the compacts. But you do have quite a few options available. One thing to note about the Ford Maverick side of things with the 4K tow package, it's $750 in Canada and $745 in the US in order to be able to add that option on to either vehicle. So any trim level you can add it on, but you do have to at least have the 2-liter EcoBoost engine, which is going to end up bumping up your price as well. Now, a few other things to consider pricing-wise for the Maverick versus the Santa Cruz is some of the options available inside of the Santa Cruz, which I think just blow the Maverick out of the water, but we'll get to that one in just a second. We're going to start off looking at box dimensions, so let's hop outside so you can see the differences between both boxes. Now, we do only have one box size available for the Maverick, and that's the 4.5-foot box that we're looking at here. We do have a slew of different features and options and things like that that are available, but a few things that are notable. Now, this is the Lariat version of the vehicle, which means that we've got some storage along the side. So we've got a few kind of little storage areas, which I'll show you in just a second, but we have a few tie downs along the front here. And then Ford introduced something that they're calling flex bed, which gives us the flexibility to literally throw 2x4s and things like that into certain parts of the truck in order to be able to customize the bed the way that we'd like it to. So that's one of the interesting things about this truck, is because Ford's made it so that it's a little bit more budget friendly, but they've taken out a few of the things that we'd find inside of the F-150 and the Ranger, etc. All right, so the bed dimensions for the truck are going to be showing up. So as you can see there, we have a nice amount of width, depth, and height to this thing, which is actually kind of a nice thing. Now, it's not going to be as much as you get inside of a half-ton or a full utility truck, but for a truck that, you can drive as a daily driver downtown Toronto, those congested streets, this is actually a pretty nice size. Now, a few things to point out: you will lose a little bit of space in the back because of the tonneau cover there. So it's a built-in retractable, and it doesn't look like it's overly easy. Well, maybe easy enough to remove. We've just got a couple things there. So I guess technically you could pull the tonneau cover out if you wanted to, but you lose about 6 inches of space there just because of the sizing difference between where the back of the truck is and then where we've got the retractable part of the tonneau cover. But it does have a nice amount of space though. And one of the cool things is that we can keep this thing down. I do believe we do have a few options for some aftermarket accessories for bed extenders and things like that, so you can get a little bit more depth there as well. Now, one other thing to point out, like I said, this truck is not too high off the ground, but I'm also 6 feet tall, so it is technically easy enough for me to reach the majority of this thing. But one of the great things about the Santa Cruz is that we do have a built-in step along the side, and that's going to be on both the driver passenger side, and we can literally launch ourselves up in order to get into the back of the truck. So that's definitely a nice thing. Now, one other thing to point out, what's going on in the back here. All right, so taking a peek along the back here, it is pretty nice because the bed here is technically finished. I mean, you could get an aftermarket WeatherTech spray if you wanted a tiny bit more protection there, but I want you to watch something for a second because we've got a little area here so we can just literally pop this thing open. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Ah, all right. So we literally have, you could technically use it as a bit more storage space, or you could use it for its intended purpose, which literally would be to use this thing as a cooler. Now, that is definitely a nice touch and definitely forward thinking because we also have a little drain plug along the bottom here. So you're going tailgating, whatever the case may be, have yourself loaded up there and you can literally drain this thing out before you hit the road again. So that is pretty nice. Now, Maverick is interesting because we've got the idea behind flex bed, we've got box lighting in both of them, sidewall storage inside of the Maverick, but then it's kind of interesting how we've got that, that under storage as well. And we do have our spare tires underneath both vehicles, which I always think is a brilliant idea. Now, another thing to look at would be the tonneau covers inside of both vehicles, because the Maverick has a tonneau cover that could easily be removed. The Santa Cruz one is technically easy to remove-ish, but you've got a soft and then a trifold hardtop and a few other options for the Maverick, versus inside of the Santa Cruz, it's just going to be a retractable cover. And the downside of that retractable cover is we lose a tiny little bit of space towards the back of the box. So something to think about there. If you're looking at maximizing your box storage, you would want to look at the Maverick over the Santa Cruz. And we do have a few other things that are kind of neat though about the Santa Cruz, like those box steps that are integrated. Like granted, these are micro trucks, so you don't necessarily have to worry about reaching up as much as you would inside of the Ranger or the F-150, but it is kind of neat that the Santa Cruz has those steps so we can easily get into the back of the bed if we need to. The Santa Cruz storage, I think, is also kind of neat. It's really, really nice whenever you see these types of things inside of vehicles. Next up, looking at fuel economy for both vehicles. So if you're concerned about fuel economy and wanting to have the best possible fuel economy, especially with the way gas prices are going, you might want to look at the Maverick instead, specifically at the hybrid version of the vehicle. As we look at the Santa Cruz's numbers, and don't get me wrong, they are fairly impressive, like 23 miles per gallon on the Santa Cruz base engine, 22 miles per gallon on the turbocharged. I think that is very impressive looking at the combined numbers. But when we go over to the Maverick, inside of the States, you're 25 miles per gallon in comparison for all-wheel drive. So you do get a little bit more bang for your buck out of the 2-liter EcoBoost because the engine itself is a little bit smaller. But the Maverick Hybrid blows the competition away, like absolutely blows it away. Like look at the numbers here. The front-wheel drive version of the Santa Cruz, 23 miles per gallon. The front-wheel drive version of the Maverick, 37 miles per gallon. Like that, like mind blown. Like that is absolutely ridiculous. It's like what, over 50% improvement in the fuel economy looking at the Maverick Hybrid versus the Santa Cruz. Now, huge asterisks everywhere, like literally all over the place there. And the reason why is because when you get the hybrid, you're maxing out at 2,000 pound towing capacity inside of the Maverick. So I mean, if you're not necessarily going to be towing as much and you want the best fuel economy, the Maverick will absolutely be the way to go if you're very price conscious looking at fuel. But if it doesn't matter either way, you need more towing capacity, the edge might be on the Santa Cruz here a tiny little bit because you get an extra 1,000 pound towing capacity and you don't take a really big hit on fuel economy at the same time. But overall, it is nice. Now, both vehicles, doesn't matter if it's the Santa Cruz or the Maverick, just use regular 87 fuel, so 87 octane. You don't need to worry about putting any sort of premium fuel inside of either engine. But you hear me say it all the time in all of my other videos, turbocharged engines specifically do tend to favor a higher octane, so like an 89 or a 91. You notice a little bit of a better performance and better fuel economy when you use that higher octane inside of turbocharged engines specifically. But they do both have fairly impressive fuel economy numbers. I just have to give the edge to the Maverick on this one because of the hybrid engine. Now, both the Maverick and the Santa Cruz have 4 full doors, so we do have quite a little bit of space in the second row. Like I'm 6 feet tall, and I have no issue sitting in either the Santa Cruz or the Maverick with plenty of foot space, knee space, and head space left overhead. And then one of the cool things is that both seats will also flip up. They'll flip forward there as well if we need to, which is definitely a nice thing. And then we do have a number of different attachment points for anchors and tethers and things like that. So if you have front-facing, rear-facing child seats, you won't have any issue getting them inside of the second row of either vehicle. As we hop into the first row of the vehicle, there are some things that are going to be very, very different between both of these things, notably inside of the Santa Cruz, because, I mean, look at the center screen inside of this thing. So the cluster screen, the media screen, looks absolutely beautiful. Looking at the Ford side of things, it is a little bit more basic in comparison. Now, the media screen for the Maverick is Ford's base sync system. We have the option for an enhanced Sync 3 system, which gives us the flexibility to be able to do things like change songs, radio stations, and things like that using our voice. But at a very minimum, we will also have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support inside of both vehicles, which is a nice thing. One of the interesting things on the Santa Cruz side of things, in the lower trim levels, with the older style media screen, it's a wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, versus in the higher trim levels with this nicer screen setup, it actually is a wired solution, which I think they kind of went backwards there a little bit, but it's different screen technology. I just think it would have made more sense to be wireless inside of the higher trims, but you can't get wireless CarPlay in the Maverick whatsoever, so it is nice to know it is available there as an option inside of the Santa Cruz at least. But this is where things kind of divert between both vehicles, because we have some things that are going to be similar, like single zone climate control, the optional dual zone, and some of the higher trim levels. We've got the option for wireless charging inside of the Maverick, whereas it's standard inside of the Ultimate or the Limited version inside of the Santa Cruz. Factory navigation is another thing. Like, yeah, both vehicles do have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so we could use Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze on both vehicles, but you can get factory navigation in the Santa Cruz, whereas you cannot get that option whatsoever in the Maverick. Doesn't matter which trim level, which package you add on, you can throw money at them. They are literally not going to give you factory navigation inside of the Maverick. And then we also have some added technology. So things like the lane keeping system, the lane following system, and adaptive cruise control. They are a little bit differently named inside of both vehicles. Ford has a package called the Copilot 360 package, which includes the blind spot system and the lane keeping system. That lane keeping system is standard across the entire Santa Cruz lineup, whereas it's optional inside of the Maverick. So it doesn't matter which trim level, you can get that lane keeping system optionally. Now, the lane keeping system is very different than the lane follow system, or in the Ford world, the lane centering system. The lane keeping system, or the lane keep assist, essentially look at that as bowling lanes. So you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, it's going to gently nudge you back into your lane. The lane follow system is essentially a lane centering system where the steering wheel is literally going to kind of take over the wheel for you in order to keep you balanced in your lanes. It's standard in the Santa Cruz. It's optional only in the Lariat on the Maverick side of things. So if that type of technology is important for you, the Santa Cruz is where you're going to want to go. And it's the same idea with the adaptive cruise control system. It's going to be standard in the higher trim levels of the Santa Cruz, optional in the Preferred, and then it's only optional inside of the Lariat version of the Maverick when you get the Lariat Luxury package. So if that technology is important for you, it is available optionally in the Maverick. You just have to essentially max out the vehicle that you get, like more or less every single option, in order to be able to get that inside of the Maverick. Now, the one last thing that I want to look at would be the warranty inside of these vehicles. So starting off on the Ford Canada side of things, we've got our basic versus powertrain warranty. So we're a 3-year 60,000 kilometer or a 3-year 60,000 mile. Powertrain is going to be a 5-year 100,000 K or 60,000 mile, which is fairly respectable. But look at Hyundai. So that same basic warranty Ford Canada is going to be a 5-year 100,000 versus a 5-year 60,000 miles. So you get a crazy amount of warranty inside of the Hyundai side of things for the basic one, but look at this powertrain warranty. The powertrain matches Ford Canada versus Hyundai Canada, but the US side of things, Hyundai USA is blowing away the warranty. Like 5-year 60 in Ford versus 10-year 100,000 mile is absolutely insane. The corrosion warranties are pretty much the same across both vehicles as well in Canada versus the States. And then you also have the roadside assistance, which is kind of a neat thing that I don't think enough people really, well, A, know about, and B, utilize. So the roadside assistance, if your vehicle breaks down, you can call up your roadside assistance, whether that's Ford or Hyundai, and they'll send a tow truck to bring you to a dealership. Most people don't know about that. I'm actually kind of surprised. Like, you could look at CAA and things like that. One of the differences between the manufacturer roadside program versus something like CAA or AAA or whatever the case may be, those other third parties programs, they actually are tied to the owner, not the vehicle. So you could pick up keys to your friend's car, go out driving. If his car breaks down, you could call and get your vehicle towed. Versus the manufacturer program, it's tied to the vehicle. So if you're driving your friend's vehicle as breaks down, you're SOL. But if you're inside of your Maverick or your Santa Cruz and you break down, you can call up the respectable either Ford or Hyundai roadside assistance and they can come and pick you up. But look at the differences between these things. They both are technically a 5-year in Canada and the States, but on the Hyundai side of things, it's unlimited mileage. So it doesn't matter if you're 150,000 miles inside this thing, and at the 5-year mark, you could still get towed to your local Hyundai dealer, which I think is brilliant. But that was a look at the Maverick versus the Santa Cruz, and done slightly different than I normally would. What did you think? If you have any questions, you're not really sure where to go, which way to go, drop down below and let me know. I'm more than willing to talk you through any issues that you might be having. We can kind of bounce ideas off of each other and things like that as well. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your social networks. Definitely helps out. And think about subscribing because that always is a nice thing. But this is kind of neat. There are quite a few different options that are available between both of the trucks. If you have to ask me which way I would go, looking at the hybrid version of the Maverick, that actually is the truck that I am contemplating on right now, and specifically for fuel economy. I kind of want to see if the hybrid version of the Maverick can really take a beating once that actually gets released, that is. So it is nice to know that you can get such an incredible mileage out of the Maverick in comparison to the Santa Cruz. Now, I also am a tech guy, so the tech side of me is like Santa Cruz, Santa Cruz, Santa Cruz, because there are so many great options and gizmos and gadgets and things like that inside of the Santa Cruz compared to the Maverick. What do you think, and which way do you think you would go? Would you go for the Maverick or would you go for the Santa Cruz? Drop down below and share your thoughts. Until I see you next time, take care.